recording another podcast for the Natural Women's Council. I'm Natasha and I'm joined here by Lisa today, one of my fellow members of the Natural Women's Council. Now, with all the campaigns that we do, we're actively affiliated with the Irish Education Alliance, Lawyers for Justice Ireland, Parents' Rights Alliance, and a number of other grassroots organisations around the country. So today we're going to focus specifically and try to keep it concise and no rambles from me. I will try specifically on the organization called BelongTo. Some people will have heard of them. Some people will have just heard of them now that I'm saying it. If you were to click on their website, you will see that they call themselves an organization for age 14 to 23-year-olds. They offer support and guidance for 14 to 23-year-olds, LGBTQIA plus, etc., 14 to 23-year-olds. But you'll be a little bit confused just from even a quick scour on their website, because you'll also see that they have got programs and resources for primary schools, which we'll talk about in a minute, and that they are active programs for secondary schools, and we'll have a deep dive in that again. So it seems that they're already very, very much involved from all ages. And we'll also see from their chair of their board that he is saying that they have a lot of work in progress that they're intending to roll out from age 10 and upwards in the coming year or so. So who are they, Lisa? You've done a very big deep dive. We know that they're a registered charity from their website also. But who funds them? Who are they? What are they all about?
Right. So it looks like, Natasha, they've been around for about 19 years, and quite a significant percentage of the funding is from you, the taxpayer. Now, they are saying in their annual report from 2022, the latest, that it's about a 50-50 split, but I have a feeling between corporate or private donations and government, I have a feeling if we did a deep dive into that, some of those donors are actually government related, or they get their money from the government and then pass it on. So I think the taxpayer funded them about 800,000 in 2022. And so you, the taxpayer, is a significant funder, as well as some corporations. So yes, they claim to be the national LBGT plus youth group for ages 14 to 23. We're sitting on 1.7 million in reserves at the end of 2022. So I think we need to put a little question mark around that. So we have children going hungry. We have children going homeless. In Ireland at the moment, we have over 3,000, but we are funding a trans organization to the tune that they're able to sit on that kind of money. So,
and Lisa, their office is based in Dublin too, right? That I believe they work out of, and they also host weekly events and get-togethers and things like that from this office in Dublin too. For those of you who aren't familiar with Dublin too, Grafton Street is Dublin too, but they're not on Grafton Street. They are close by in Parliament Street. Is that correct?
I'm not. Do you know what? I think actually Parliament Street sounds right. I don't know their actual
address on their website. And I thought maybe that's just for the PO box, but then I saw that they actually have weekly events or get-togethers at that address, so it's an active office.
Yeah, their office, particularly in Dublin, they have a lot of youth meetings, and quite a few. So yeah, that's a nice address to have as well. They have 22 staff. They have 57 volunteers. Their CEO last year made 84,114 euros and 51 cents. That I think basically, just trying to think, that's really it. As you mentioned in the intro, they and their CEO in the discussion in the annual report said they now want to start targeting 10 to 14-year-olds in primary schools. So we'll get into why that's concerning.
They also say that they're compliant with any of the various child safety acts and statutes that we have in the country, so which I assume it covers vetting, and that all of their staff is vetted as well. I can only assume Garda vetted if they're working with kids.
I would hope so, because again, they're the ones stating they're dealing with minor children. So children are minors until they're 18 years old. So they certainly should be compliant with all of that. So I think that's like a broad background. They've been around for 19 years. They're extremely well funded. They're sitting on quite a lot of money. They are claiming they're for youth age 14 to 23, but very clearly looking to move down the ranks and go to primary schools.
Go to in accordance with the words from the chair. So just to talk briefly, because the bigger deep dive, I suppose, is what they're actively doing with secondary schools at the moment and what they have
Mm.
underway. Let's talk about what they have underway with the primary schools. The altogether now resources that they have available for primary schools around the country. Why are these needed, and what are what do the resources entail?
Well, to be perfectly honest, I haven't done a deep dive into the primary school. It was
Yeah,
really, I just came across that while I was researching and looking at their website, and was quite
yeah,
shocked to
yeah,
find that an organization
yeah.
that in their website, on everything they put out, they say we start at 14. So we can only presume they made a conscious decision that their material, their messaging, what they're talking about is inappropriate for children under 14. Now, a reasonable adult or parent could say, I actually think this is inappropriate for all minor children. And I
Yeah.
certainly would hold that view. So I'll be honest, Natasha, I didn't do a deep dive into that. I thought,
I
okay,
had a quick look, so
yeah,
I'll just for the sake of the
you
viewers, I'll
you
let
go
them
on
know just
then.
what this is. You could click on the website and have a look at this yourself, and you'll get about as much information as I'm going to say. Because as we're saying, we didn't do a deep dive on this particular thing. Sorry about the lawnmower outside. Um, so the altogether now, it gives a lot of resources, and what it's for is that they're saying that they have discovered through talking over the years to LGBTQIA people, that they have discovered that there is a major issue, it seems, with homophobia, transphobia in primary schools, which is news to me.
Mhm.
So this is what they're saying, that there is an issue, and that these now have here are the tools to deal with this.
Yeah.
Now they also say in the same piece of reading, you'll also find that they say that they have found that it's from, with the majority of people, it's from age 12 that they start to realize, they start to notice that there's something different about them. But of course, people are graduating from, or kids are graduating from primary school at age 11 or 12. So you'd wonder then, is this mammoth issue of homophobia and transphobia really in primary schools? Or are they claiming that there is this massive issue in primary schools that needs to be dealt with that actually isn't there at all? And they're implanting now
Yeah.
information about this sexuality and
Yeah.
gender, etc., into schools any which way that they can do it. So what they have in the resources is a slideshow, various different reading materials. They have a PDF document which is laid out of various different words, which they have translated Oscuelga also.
Which is very interesting.
Very, very interesting. So that's all of the words, from the sexualities to the genders, etc., is there all in this package. That they're happy and on hand to discuss with teachers how they should do these training days, these anti-bullying, they're calling them training
Mm.
days or training weeks with their kids, with the kids in the class, the various initiatives that they can do. And they've actually included quotes from schools that have already done these taken all of these resources and did these trainings with the pupils, anti-bullying trainings with the pupils. And there's quotes from teachers who are from 4th class, 5th class, 6th class, so that's age 9 and 10 and upwards, where they have outlined what is bullying and all things that we think are, that sounds very wholesome. What is bullying? What can you do to combat bullying? What are the rights of pupils in school, etc.? But of course, the main thing in this is, they're going through sexuality. What is it? What do all these words mean?
Yeah.
And all the rest. So I would put it to any parent listening to this that they are literally creating an issue with kids that are not of the age of comprehension perhaps yet, and
Yeah.
they're giving them all these words, and they're letting them hear about sexuality. But most importantly, they're letting these kids know that they'll get almost a special privilege.
Yeah.
Like, the teachers are all here and you will be untouchable if anybody says anything
Yeah.
to you that we could deem as
Yeah.
being unkind or
There's,
homophobic.
there's a
No
lot of
child is homophobic.
psychology. Yeah, there's
No
a lot
child
of
could
psychology
possibly.
behind it. And I
Yeah.
think the approach both with the primary school and the secondary is problem that doesn't exist, but we'll say it does. Reaction, get parents, teachers, students
Saturated.
upset, and enrolls belong to with the solution, which is really what they're interested in the first place. There wasn't a problem. There isn't homophobia or transphobia in our primary schools. And I do not believe it's in our secondary schools. It's been implanted in the schools, in the minds, and it's been done very cleverly. So the use of language, the use of, as you're saying, sort of elevating these children if they identify, because that's very important. You have to come and tell us you're transgender or you're gay. And once you have that, you're elevated, but you're also made a victim, and you're fearful. You're told you're fearful. And, this is all very heavy psychological stuff that's being thrown at our children, and it's very difficult for them to see it through it. And frankly, I think the teachers as well have been, told that this is anti-bullying and this is inclusive and it's welcoming. And, we all want to be those things, and I think what we need to do is take a deep breath, take a step back and say, well, wait a minute here. Why is this happening? Is there really a problem? So it's very easy for an organization to put up a survey. You can go on to BelongTo and you can do their surveys. There's no way of confirming that this is an Irish 14-year-old who's questioning their gender. It could be anyone from anywhere around the world filling these surveys out, and boom, you get the results that you want. So really,
and also question their surveys. Surveys can be very manipulative. For example, if they're multiple choice and there's no option to say none of the above, if they're done out in that spectrum of highly agree right down to strongly disagree, and when they're then correlating a percentage of people who believe that there's homophobia or have experienced or witnessed homophobia in their school is 70% or whatever, they could take anybody who somewhat disagrees right up to somebody, who it's just so open for manipulation. These
it's
these
discernment.
surveys, you can see the way that they're done out. You can get any results you want from them and fabricate any percentages out that you want from them. That would be what I would take from them anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it's very possible. And the thing is to be discerning. And where is this all coming from? So I think really that gets us to who BelongTo is, what they're doing now, what their goal is. And
I can see, sorry to interject, but I
go
can
on.
see why their goal going forward is to create more robust programming from age 10 and up, because they're planting the seeds now to create an issue, for kids to start claiming that they're this or that when they're not, so that they feel like they get this sort of, added kind of something unique or something cool about them, or something that means that nobody can ever say, in their minds, nobody can ever say a cruel word to them, and life will be just sail through easier if they put this label on. And they're creating then a need for something that was never there organically, or never ever going to be there organically, and hasn't been in the history of
and
for as long as we've had schools.
If we even take a step back, what do we want? We want resilient children, resilient, robust children. And these groups say, no, 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 they're special. They're bullied. They're fearful. They're putting it in their heads that if you identify this, yes, we elevate you, but you're a fragile creature. I want robust children. I want resilient children. I want children who can rely on themselves. So, I think to keep that in mind, because, safe spaces, it's not safe. We're fearful. It's a very fearful, unhappy message. So,
and if I was a teacher and I'm there telling some of your classmates come into school every day and they feel like I'm telling them, and all of a sudden you're thinking, God, the world isn't what I thought it was. Everybody's I'm so happy. I just assumed everyone else was. And now no, everyone else is. It's just creating all this chaos in a poor child's head that doesn't need to be there.
I think so. And
so my apologies for my big fat ramble. I will allow you to go on.
No, I think it's good to highlight the primary school, because it's coming, and I think when I started looking at all of this, it really very much was focused on secondary schools, but between them having the all together information for the primary schools and the CEO saying, well, this is where we're going,
the chairperson,
or the chairperson, sorry, it's not the CEO, the chairperson. So look, I suppose then that's who they are. And then what's going on? What are they doing in the secondary schools at the moment? So what they're doing in the secondary schools at the moment is they're basically saturating the schools with sexuality, with gender issues, with transgenderism. And how they are doing that is they basically have two programs, let's say. They've been running for, I believe, 13 years now, Stand Up Week, early in November every year. Sorry, I thought I'd be safe with my dogs here. I'm just going to let them out.
So while Lisa's gone, they are going to be running this year's one in November from the week of November 6th. That's correct?
That's correct. And what I think is they have chosen the very first week in a secondary school that the schools would allow them in, knowing they have new first years who are just getting adjusted. It would have been very disruptive. So the children will just be back from their Halloween break, right? And these 12 and 13-year-olds in first year are going to be hit with an entire week of BelongTo, sexuality, sexual orientation, transgenderism. There's pictures
There'll
with
be
lovely
activities
rainbows.
and
They'll be in with
yeah.
the bigger kids and feeling like part of it. So, I mean, I would very much look at this week as recruitment week for
Mm.
BelongTo.
Now
And
it's not Pride Month, right? At the moment,
no,
it's like
no,
November isn't
no,
Pride
no,
Month.
but this is
This is an
stand up week.
addition. This is an
Stand up
addition
week,
to Pride Month. So we already have Pride Month
which is
on
July,
the
I think.
national calendar earlier
Yeah,
in the year. We have, various other, I mean, every county seems to have their own separate
yeah,
Pride Month then. So it's 360. And then this is an addition specifically for secondary schools,
yeah.
stand up week that happens at the start of the winter each year.
Yeah, right when they get back from Halloween break, and it's a saturation, a full week dedicated basically to BelongTo and their messaging and their indoctrination. And
Now, are all schools involved or?
uh, not all schools, but I believe that this is quite a popular program. So in their annual report from last year, they are claiming that 312,971 students were reached through Stand Up Awareness Week. So I don't know how many schools that translates to, but well over 250,000 children last year, or this was probably 2021, no, 2022, were exposed to this indoctrination and recruitment week. And I guarantee you, very few parents knew about it. No parents were asked, is this okay with them? And the other thing that they do, and this is much more recent, is they are seeking schools, secondary schools, to sign up for their Quality Mark program, which is an intensive 18-month program. It cost €1,000 to the school, to this very rich NGO that has lots of money. And it's a whole school program. So BelongTo will come in and have access to the whole school for 18 months to ensure that the teachers and the principals and the students are completely on board with their messaging. And we haven't even gotten into why we think the messaging isn't right, what's actually going on behind it, but just to set the scene. So it
And
looks
nearly
like
60 schools have already signed up. Is that correct?
I think there's about
57, I think it was when I read 57 schools are
57 schools
already,
have joined the mark. So
that'll
my
be
understanding,
underway.
yeah, so really, my understanding is that secondary schools, we have about 400,000 secondary school students. So if they reach 312,000 over that, somebody's at the door, but I'm just going to ignore that. That means they'll get their stand-up week. Almost all schools are participating in that.
Mm.
So they've nearly got it. Now they're working away on their quality mark. So
Mhm.
57 schools have joined it, but it takes 18 months. So how
So can
many
I
are in the pipeline?
How many? So 18 months. I assume it means that there is random visits with clipboards. I can only assume because there has to be, in order for there to be a quality mark, there
Yes,
has to be marks of quality. So there has to
yes.
be something that they have looked at that's not on the website as far as I can see.
Couldn't
That's
see
a
it.
whole list of criteria, if you
Yeah,
will, that a
yeah,
school would have they would be graded on. I don't know, marked out
yes,
of 10 or a box checked. Do they have this? Do they have that? Do they have the other? And based on that, they would be accredited or not this
yes,
mark. Now, I don't know if this mark is a gold, silver, or bronze, or how it works out.
yeah.
Um, but I imagine that given the psychological play that they do, that it might well be, or it might well come to be eventually. So we have got members of BelongTo who I don't know, which members we don't know, who they are, what they are, we don't know, going in and out of schools over an 18-month period on the school's book, nearly 850 quid a pop, I think, and basically checking to see if they have all these things. And I'm sure because it's spread over 18 months that they're also given some guidance along the way, perhaps,
Oh,
and
of course.
saying,
Yeah.
like, just, I really want you to get this quality mark and you are falling short on these things, but
Yeah.
maybe if you implement them within the 18-month bracket, you'll
Yeah.
be in with the shoe running to get this quality mark, I assume.
Yeah, there isn't a huge amount on what they need to do. What they do is, I believe they look for each school to assign 2 or 3 teachers to, run the program. And I
And they might
suppose,
talk to the student council as well, I believe.
yeah, absolutely. And I suppose all of these things are taking away from the fundamental purpose of a school. Why we send our children to school. While we're told we have to send our children to school so that they get educated, they can read, they can write, they can be productive um, employees and productive parts of society. So one thing for parents
Capable
to
parts of society even,
capable, right? So, for example, what we've learned and looking into this, science is no longer a core subject in secondary school. Children
Yeah.
actually have to fight for that.
This has actually been a slow drip over the years. So
It has.
they rejigged this some years ago, and the core subject thing for junior cycle, they rejigged some years ago and removed a lot of these things as optional. So
Yeah.
that's not new, but they have done that recently, as well. That's become more and more prevalent, that the core subjects, and they've shoehorned in the SPHE as a core
Yeah.
subject, which
Yeah.
previously, and
Yeah.
which
And
which
that's
is
the
hilarious, because then that means it has examinations, which means that it has right and wrong answers.
yes.
So
Yeah.
anybody who was to use factual biology, for example, will fail that
Yeah.
subject,
Yeah. There
right?
might be a reason why science is no longer a core subject. We really don't want you talking about science because,
Yeah, now that's a new thing, that they've removed science. They had removed a
yes.
number of other things that made them optional, but removing science is something that's been done in the last number of years and made that optional.
Yeah, yeah. So we don't actually want students to understand science, and that would be helpful to get this sort of indoctrination in, because when we break it down and we look at why we have an issue with it, there's no science behind it. So, like, why is this the problem, right? So basically, we have BelongTo coming into school saying this is anti-bullying. Well, we would say it's actually bullying. Bullying, you have to have a full week about us. You need to have an 18-month program about us and our views and how we view the world. And I would say that that's not inclusive, that's exclusive. What about the parents who don't believe in this, who believe that
Yeah.
children are born in the right bodies? And it's also anti-science, because it is very, very clear that there are no trans children. We have children with gender dysphoria who need medical psychological care. And
Or
that,
indeed rapid onset gender dysphoria, children who have shown absolutely no historical signs whatsoever of identifying as being the opposite sex.
yeah,
And then lo and behold, all of a sudden, whack, at the age of anything from, 10, 12, whatever age, 15, whatever, all of a sudden then there is this rapid onset gender dysphoria that I'm not discrediting. I mean, they're clearly having a mental health crisis.
yeah,
But that's what we have. But just going back to that, as you're saying, like, they're going in there and saying, okay, this is the way. But I just want to know, how do they come to that? What is the, what's their
what is the
supporting
way?
sources? Where are they getting this
Yeah,
information from? I mean, there, as I said, just from a quick look on the website, I can see lots of contradictions. As I said, even from the primary schools, saying that bullying, homophobic and transphobic bullying, is a huge issue apparently in primary schools. But then they're also saying in the same breath that it's only from age 12 and upwards that more often than not, that kids start to feel different or realize that they're different. So there's so much contradictory issue, and I cannot find any resources. What are their scientific resources? What are their psychological resources? What are their medical resources? Where are they getting all this information from that they're handing to people? Now, one of the documents that's on their website, that is information on transgenderism, which is a PDF, is essentially done up in a Word document that was put on there, typed up, and it has lines of information on transgenderism. And there's a little disclaimer at the bottom that says that this was factual when it was created in 2007. We're now
mm,
23, right? And on this document, there's a Wikipedia link. Now, when I was in university, I remember the lecturer walking up and down if she'd assigned us something to say, Wikipedia is not a reliable source. And she'd be pointing at a few choice,
Yeah,
choice students in the class who were repeat offenders of this, because anybody can edit Wikipedia, and they can change them. Not to say that you cannot get factual and reliable information on Wikipedia. What I'm saying is that anybody can
it's
edit
not
it and it can
verified.
be
Yeah,
changeable over time.
yeah,
So they put a little disclaimer. There's no way that none of their staff has had time to edit or amend this since 2007. But my point is that I believe they've kept that disclaimer there so that they can sort of feign ignorance and say, oh, apologies that there was misinformation or whatever word they want to use on that. We hadn't gotten around to editing that since then. And at the time, we believed that to be factual. And none of us have a time machine to go back and see what sources were back then. But
yeah.
either way, it wasn't true then. It's not true now. It's not going to be true. But there's these little holes in the website, and I just cannot see what their sources are beyond them claiming to be an authority on all things.
Yeah, I mean, that's really one of the big issues here, that there are no transgender children. And I suppose to back up a little bit, from my reviewing this over the last couple months, it's my view that BelongTo seek to transgender children, to put children into that category, that is seen as the exciting category to be in, that just being gay is seen as a bit humdrum. And we have testimony from young people who have gone through BelongTo groups and et cetera, who testify to that fact. And that one young man said he went in, he was gay, went in with some friends, and he said what he found was by the third, and they all identified as gay. And he said by the third or fourth BelongTo meeting that they attended, they were identifying as transgender, and then they were feted, and this was wonderful. So I believe that their strong goal is to take children who maybe are gay, and put them down the path to transgenderism. And the difficulty is as well is that 90% of the people who attended gender dysphoria clinics in Ireland last year, according to the government, were on the autism spectrum. So we have children potentially who are adolescents, so they're going to be confused anyways, possibly gay, and quite possibly, most likely, autistic, who are being pushed into this ideology. And that's exactly what it is. It's an ideology. It is not a science. The
They've been
doctors,
pummeled with labels that say you're feeling uncomfortable. Select one of these,
yeah,
essentially,
yeah,
because we can't make sense of why we're feeling uncomfortable. Like we all went through adolescence, every single one of us went through it, and we remember the discomfort and the confusion and the various different things that we felt about our own bodies and about life and about the world, and also coming into adulthood and just as you learn new information and new things unfold, you're for me anyway, your childhood that you had versus slowly the adult life unveiling itself to you, it's all a very chaotic time. So for anybody to come along at that time of impression and present these poor kids with all of these labels, and that these labels come with privilege, untouchable privilege, the
yes,
whole school has a policy just for you. It has a flag raising ceremony just for you that the
yeah,
president or whatever she is of Into will come out and host in your
yeah.
school.
You're a
You know what I
privileged
mean?
victim. You're a privileged, frightened
This whole
victim.
thing. Yeah, and
Yeah.
we have this getting pummeled at us, these messages. It's very, very worrying indeed, very, very worrying indeed. And that actually makes me think now as well, recently, there's guidance that's actively given out to schools, which was created in 2019. It's a training manual for schools, created by BelongTo in 2019, still actively in use. And in this manual, it says that if a parent were to come to you as a teacher, a parent was to come to you and ask questions about their own child with regards to anything LGBTQIA plus, and they were to ask you, maybe they might ask you, has my child been identifying as a different name in class, a different gender in class? Does my child seem this or that or the other way to you? And they'd ask the teacher about this. BelongTo's advice is that for the teachers to say that they do not know, they don't know, they have no idea. Now, at the same breath, they're getting information from BelongTo, from Into, from all these people, telling them how to facilitate a social transition in the classroom. In fact, there is an animated video from Into showing teachers, demonstrating for teachers the language and everything else that they should use on how to facilitate a social transition in a classroom. This video is directed at primary school teachers.
Mm.
So they're getting all these, and BelongTo are the same. They're giving all these resources on how to do this and how to go about doing this. And also they have documents on the website on the stages of transing, from social transitioning. They have information on depot. They have links on how to do it, etc., etc. Social transitioning, right the way through to extreme medicalization,
Yeah.
extreme surgeries. They have these information. So we know that they're sending all this to schools. And so you'd have to think, okay, they're also claiming that transgender people are more at risk of suicide, despite the fact that there's absolutely no evidence of the things that they suggest. But it's often something that's used, a crux that's used to gaslight parents into going along with all of this, to say things like, you know, oh, well, if you don't let them transition or you don't let them do this, that, or the other, they might kill themselves. You know, there's absolutely no evidence of this. But by their own admission, or by their own assertion, indeed, they're saying that these people are highly mentally vulnerable. They're mentally vulnerable individuals. They're going through a mental health crisis, you could say then. And then if we go to medicine and we see that gender dysphoria is listed as a medical condition, as a mental health condition, as a medical disorder, in fact. And we have all of these in place. And then you have a parent who's going to ask a teacher if their child essentially is having a mental health crisis. And the teacher, even if they are fully aware, they are told to say that they don't know. Now, if a child, by their assertion, has suicidal ideation, and their advice then is to keep that information from a parent, that is horrifying. Now, these are just an organization, just a charity. They're not an authority. They're not a voted in government. None of us have elected them. However, the government in place now have, you could argue, but they have been elected into power. So recently, Gript Media put to Minister O'Gorman, this is the advice that BelongTo is giving to schools, to essentially lie to parents, to say that they don't know, even if they are privy to this information, which could be, by their own assertion, a mental health crisis, suicidal ideation in a child, etc. That's what we're talking about. And O'Gorman said, first of all, that he'd have to see the context. It was put to them again a couple of weeks later when he would have had time to have a look-see of the context of the charity that he funds from his department. And in which case he admitted, yes, I have had time to look at it. And he gaslit this journalist by using personal information. He's a gay man. And he had said, well, you know, he completely gaslit and said, well, if a teacher had outed me to my parents, that could have been detrimental for me. And I'm very glad they didn't. I got to do it in my own time. But that's not the issue at play here. The advice given is for LGBTQI, so trans identified, anything like that, which by their own assertion is a mental health crisis, suicidal ideation, and they are being told to tell parents that they don't know about it. And Minister O'Gorman said that he wholeheartedly supports this. He wholeheartedly supports teachers lying to parents.
Yeah. And this is specifically about transgenderism. So you're absolutely right. So on one hand, the parents are being beaten up and told, you must transition your child. Do you want a dead son or a living daughter? And yet at the same time, so clearly a mental health issue. And at the same time, Stand Up is teaching or training teachers who know that a child believes they're transgender, which means
or
they have gender dysphoria.
Yeah.
Facilitators, and telling them to point blank lie to the parent's face about a mental health condition that they claim suicide is attached to. So who is the unsafe space in that scenario? And because what will the parent do? The parent will seek medical advice. And that is what they do not want. BelongTo does not have a medical license. They are not trained therapists. They are not endocrinologists. They are not licensed medical healthcare workers to support the child with a mental health condition. And the best way to think about this for parents are like, well, maybe, you know, this is different. This is body just, you know, they're unhappy with their body.
It is body dysmorphia.
So if your child had anorexia, okay, they are uncomfortable with their body. They feel it's big. And it has a lot to do with adolescence and my understanding and all of that. I don't claim to be an expert. But if your child, if there was anorexia week in the school, which we know we wouldn't do because we know there's social contagion for these sorts of things. So we don't do it with other issues that we know children are susceptible to. But if they did have it and a child came to a teacher and said, I think that I'm very fat and I think that I have anorexia and I don't want to eat. In fact, I want to eat less. Do we advise teachers to affirm and keep it a secret from the parents? No, of course not. The teacher
Hmm.
would say, this is a serious critical issue. Your parents would need to know, and I must, for your safety, let your parents know that you're suffering from anorexia. We won't keep it a secret. We won't have you come into school with a lunch and we put it in the bin and say, keep going.
Absolutely.
You know,
And
I'm
even,
going to affirm you, honey. You're looking a little chubby today. In fact, give me that apple. I don't think you should eat that apple, but we won't tell mommy and daddy because we're the safe space.
and
Like,
even if the child was to beg, oh, please don't tell my parents, they would have to say, I'm sorry, sweetheart, I have a statutory obligation
yeah,
to inform your
yeah,
parents because this is an issue, and we want to
yeah.
support you
And
and
mom
let's
and dad
bring
love
in,
you. And
yeah,
they're going to
you
bring you
know,
to a doctor, to a therapist, someone who can talk to you
yeah,
about this. And we support our children 100%. Affirming is not supporting. Affirming is saying you have a mental disorder at the moment, and affirming is saying we're going to pretend that you're right, that you are a girl
yeah.
but you're a boy, or that you're thin but we're going to tell you you're fat. Like, we don't do that with our children, and that's the difficulty that groups like BelongTo have, because we pull the rug out from under them when we take our children back into the safe space that is the home
Yeah,
and get them the medical care that they need. Well, there's a lost child that they wanted to transition, you know?
absolutely. And by their own bullet points, they have like of listing transitioning, and which you can read in many places, not only on BelongTo's website. The first step is the social transition. And as I said, they have links for deed poll, and they have also the social transition in environments and things like that. If you're not going to tell the parent, and if the teacher is being trained on how to socially transition in the a child in the classroom, then this child is getting down those steps closer to medicalization,
Yeah.
um, before a parent even knows. Now, yes, a lot of the case the parent might know, but the parent may not know because the child may have rapid onset gender dysphoria and has never displayed any inclination whatsoever of wanting to be, desires to be the opposite sex, of being uncomfortable, any of these
Yeah.
things. And they could think, okay, well, my child is getting a bit hormone, her body has changed recently, I've noticed, or his body has changed recently, I've noticed, they're 11, they're 12, so this is probably just hormonal. They're probably just cranky because this, that, and the other. And they don't realize that there's actually what's happening is this major thing where nobody in the classroom calls the child that you christened Sheila, or when they were
Yeah.
born, you gifted that name to them. They're now calling them Thomas.
Yeah.
And you've no idea that that's happening. No idea. And already they're going through this implosion and this complete crisis
Without you.
without
And
you.
in fact, getting an extremely clear message from groups like BelongTo and the teachers that have bought into this. I've got to believe that there are teachers out there who sidestep this carefully and don't, keep things a secret from parents. But I think there's like a fact that shocked me, and I think most people maybe don't know this. I was shocked to learn it. The parents of the child involved in the uh, Enoch Burke case were reading the newspapers along with the rest of us,
Yeah.
wondering what child it was in their school. They were probably asking their child, do you know who it was? Imagine that. There was a child who was transitioning. And, Enoch Burke, whatever their views on it,
Mhm.
the Enoch Burke case went on for months and months and months.
Yeah.
And the parents had no idea there was a national uproar over their child because the
Mhm.
school
And how that
kept it.
conversation started was that it was in I don't know, a teacher's meeting or a teacher's boardroom or meeting area or whatever it was, and they were being told that, oh, that child, now we're now calling that child X, Y, and Z, and Enoch had voiced and said, well, I won't be doing that. It's a Christian school, so it was not upholding the Christian
Yeah.
school ethos, but for his own personal sake, he believed that that wouldn't be safeguarding the child, that would be causing damage to the child. And he's obviously knew our acts and statutes quite well, and as well on his own conscientious basis, he was so. Yeah, the school were actively talking to teachers who weren't even in that child's class, who didn't even have that
But
child
the
for
parents
a
weren't
period.
told.
They were actively telling, oh, this is by the way, these are the pronouns for this, these are the pronouns for this. They were socially transitioning this child
Yes.
without completely. There has been cases as well, by the way, for litigation around the world, and one of them in California of all places, because it's happened in lots of places, but this blows my mind because California of all places, which is woke.com, and they won the case because the school socially transitioned their 13-year-old unbeknownst to the mother, and the mother sued the school, the board of education, and the whole lot of them she sued, and because they were claiming, well, we're following this guidance, we're following that guidance, so everyone was pointing fingers each
Yeah.
way. But either way, the child had already gone through this and caused God knows what mental health, God knows what damage, God knows what issues it might have created that were never there before. And she won her case in
Of course she
California
did.
of all places. So
Yeah.
believe you me, and I say this to all parents, we are empowered, we
Yeah.
are the pinnacle, we are the tip of the top,
Yeah.
and everything supports us in this country. The acts and statutes support us, our
That's right.
constitutions support us. We are the primary carer, we are the primary educator, and everything supports us, and they know that. So the
Yeah.
most scary thing that we can do to these people is invoke our rights
Yeah.
and stand up and opt out. And in the case, which we'll be talking in a minute with this stand-up week, stand up and say, hang on a second, first of all, you didn't uphold your statutory obligation to inform me that this was happening in the school. I withdraw my consent, or I voice that I do not consent to these things being taught to my child, and I want to opt my child out. And that does not mean that your child needs to miss a week of school. The school surely needs to facilitate a way that your child can still go to school, can still go for the purposes of education, which is what the parent assumes they're being sent for, and not be involved in any of this horseshit, to put it,
Yeah.
to put it what it is.
I think if you flip the situation and said, okay, well, if the Catholic Church wanted to run a stand-up Catholic student week, and there was a week dedicated to, the catechism, everything about Catholicism, the teachers and principals would clearly understand that the children whose parents had a constitutional right to say, I don't want my child to have religious education, they would have to deal with them. And
Yeah.
what the Department of Education is trying to convince the schools is, I know you have to teach this stuff. So a letter went out a few weeks ago, clearly drafted by a solicitor in the Department of Education, addressed to the parents, but to come from the school saying, oh, we're very happy as a school with this new curriculum that's coming in. And here's all the legislation, parents, sorry, we have to do this. And you can't say word dot about it. And it's not true. It's on my list of things to do, to have a response,
We
to
had
go back to
the
that
letter.
one.
It shocked me, and the amount of
Yeah.
red marker we all had going through it. Going,
Yeah.
what is this? It was all insinuation. It
Yeah.
was wordplay, as you say.
Yeah.
It was clearly crafted by
Yeah.
somebody with a legal
Sent it
mind.
out to the parents to give all the principals the
And
right to go, we don't
But
have
it's
to
all
listen to you.
nonsense, of course,
It's
because
not
it was
true.
implying and insinuating
Yeah.
and making assertions that someone just reading it at a glance would think, oh, I don't have any rights here. This is when that's not the case at all. Yeah,
They wouldn't be bothered to do these sorts of things if we parents didn't have legal rights to protect our children.
no, they
If
wouldn't.
what they were doing doesn't go against science,
They
against
wouldn't be drip
morality.
feeding and being so sneaky. And here's the thing, what we have against us at the moment is a government who is trying to shoehorn and saturate in this globalist agenda of sexualizing and transing all of children, making them very confused, hopefully getting them on the road to puberty blockers because they're hoping to get that first step out of the way without parents knowing of social transitioning. BelongTo advises which doctors you can go to. They advise which one is available publicly for free, and the waiting list is a little bit long, and the one that they advise you can go privately to pay for, and how you can get your medications and how you can get on the road to getting things chopped, healthy body parts chopped off, etc. But what I'm saying is we have got the government stacked against us in one way, and as I say, we have to invoke our rights and ensure that we are using our voice and don't assume somebody else will do it. It takes every single parent. We are all champions for our children here, and by doing so, you're champions for all for every child. But now what we have is these jokers, this charity here with their size nines under the table of all of our schools. And who are they, I ask you, who are they to accredit anything to our schools? They have not been elected. They are not, we don't know who made out the criteria. It is not clear. It is not transparent. As I said, who made out this criteria that they're going to check the boxes in these schools? They have absolutely, as far as I'm concerned, no right to step foot in any school and to accredit or put a stamp of approval on any school, because they are not elected, they are not the Board of Education, or are they perhaps a shadow Board of Education working hand in glove with the
Yeah,
government?
that's a really good point. I think what I failed to mention here is when you go through the new junior cycle curriculum, which is completely sexualized, saturated with transgenderism, pornography, parents, hello, pornography to our little 12 and 13 and 14 and 15-year-olds, all about consent, because that's the only thing that matters with sex. And what you know, believe you me, the whole idea of teaching our little innocent children, age 12 and 13, about consent, when currently the age of consent is 17, is to drop that age and then eventually drop it out completely. But what the other way they have the foot in the door, and it's a really, really important point, is that they are writing the curriculum. So with the new junior cycle teacher aides, I went on to the NCCA website, who prepares the curriculum for the schools, or the curriculum, and then it goes out to different bookbinders or whomever, publishers, and some of the teacher tools, booklets, 20, 40 pages. Who do you think they thank first and foremost for helping them prepare?
Yep,
And it's the and they change hands, because then this document was actually drafted by the HSE, but they had BelongTo come in. As you said,
they have an extensive list. There was a list of perhaps 10 to 15, maybe 10 people thanked, or organizations thanked.
Yes.
And BelongTo was listed. So it wasn't, was listed at the very first. And I looked, and it's not alphabetized, even though you could think
priority. Who really wrote this? And actually, do I have it here? I don't know if I'd be able to show it.
We can always link underneath when we post the video.
I have my daughter's school's well-being book, and I don't know if you're going to be able to see it, but there's literally advertisements for BelongTo, and I don't know if you can see that. See these pretty colorful things, all rainbows. It's very, very pretty and inclusive. Well, their phone numbers are in for our kids. They're absolutely saturated with it. They're advertising in the books, Tenny, and BelongTo. So
I just called to my attention there the time that we're currently on.
Yes.
We have promised that we
are trying to be good.
The rest of the Metro Women's Council, that we will start making podcasts as robust as possible, and we will try and keep them all under an hour. We could go on all day, but I hope that at the very least that this podcast will leave you curious enough that you will go and do some research on who BelongTo are, and indeed get in touch with us if you have any other questions that you want us to dig into, because we are very actively, aren't we, with the Freedom of Information Act requests and things like that. So what we will do,
we did a podcast on that just last week, Jana and myself, on freedom of information. Again, a little bit long, but that information is there. We're going to post that and publish those letters so people can see what's going on when you try to ask the government.
What sort of
it's coming from, how did you involve parents? I mean, that's a whole nother story. But there's so much we can do, and I think we do want to be positive about
this. That's what we're going to finish up on. Is our solutions, right?
So solutions. We have a BelongTo letter that can go to your secondary school, where you were pointing out all of these issues. I mean, we didn't even get into here. There's a Senator Crogwell who has put up on Twitter the testimony of a young gay man who basically testifies that this BelongTo is just transing children. There's a lot there. So there's a letter that you can send into your school. I would urge you to call your school, meet with your principal, talk about this. Ask them, are you doing this stand-up week? I don't want my child involved. Are you seeking this quality mark? I don't want my child in a school where this is being sought. I want them to be educated. Talk to your kids first and foremost.
And if you just on that note, with this talking to the school, if you have worries like us that it could be a slippery slope to this accreditation becoming mandatory in schools. So schools then have to they have a list that they have to, we better do this because, we have to uphold this, BelongTo are going to be in to make sure we have the flag flying and the signs in the corridor and the initiatives running every month. and all of a sudden it's just going to be shoehorned into
Yeah, it's
schools
a
that
given.
otherwise would have
Then it's a
avoided
given, and then it's
it.
mandatory. So you push back now before it's mandatory.
Or it
I'd
is.
also say join us. There's the Natural Women's Council. There's the Parents' Right Alliance. There, if you're a teacher, the Irish
Irish
Education
Education
Alliance.
Alliance.
There's
Yeah.
Catholic associations and groups and parent groups that are fighting against this. Some of the people fighting against it are atheists. There's, a large group of people. Talk to other parents. That's
Yeah.
so like
Christian
that's
Voices
really
Ireland is
hard.
another great resource.
Yeah,
Mm.
but yes, and there's a lot of resources there. So does everyone have a website? Natasha, do you know? Irish Education Alliance certainly does. Parents' Right Alliance, I believe, does.
They all do. We're gonna put all the website links underneath so that you can
Okay.
have a look, see, and perhaps we'll even include a few other useful links for parents. But if it's a thing that you just even got in touch with any of us, even through the
Yep.
National Women's Council, we can then put you in touch directly with people. We often have people reaching out to us, especially with the opt out from the schools recently,
Yeah.
and we are happy to talk to anybody anytime, point them to the stack of information that we've come up with. We even have a one sheeter that just has lots of links and useful information. And also, of course, we work hand in hand with the Lawyers for Justice Ireland, who offer pro bono legal advice to anybody who needs it, really. So, if ever there's an issue with that you believe that perhaps your statutory rights are being
Yep.
obstructed, or being not only obstructed, being completely, blocked or whatsoever, or, completely, you're unable
And they have the
to you've
opt-out
been
letter.
told you
Yep.
don't have them. Yeah,
Yeah.
you can get in touch and we can help you draft letters and all sorts of things. But this latest letter, this BelongTo letter, is on the Irish Education Alliance, I believe is where it's
Yes.
housed, but we will have a link underneath so you can see the template, edit it as
Yep.
you will, edit it as you wish. You've got a couple of weeks before Halloween break, so we advise everyone to do it ASAP. And yeah, just know that your child doesn't have to be exposed to this.
Yep.
It's
Let's
saturating
keep
everywhere,
kids
but they don't have
kids.
to be exposed
Let's
to this as
keep
much as
children.
you
Yeah,
can.
like
Yeah.
we got to be kids. I'm an older parent, so I definitely got to be a kid at this age. Like this sort of stuff. Like people would be put in jail for coming into school and teaching this stuff to kids. Like you'd really be questioned. And it's just, it's been scope creep all along for several
Yeah.
decades to the point where what should be shocking parents, and I think it is shocking parents, they're just embarrassed and unsure. And when did this happen? And am I allowed to speak up? You most certainly are. And talk to other parents because you'll be surprised. Parents didn't know and they are finding out. And if we group together, I think that's really important.
You will
And
easily find parents to group
yes,
together with. There is always the loud sort of trans right activist who will shout you down, and it seems like in our societies, there's that one loud voice that says, no, wrong, unkind, bullying, hateful, fascist, who
yeah,
will shout you and will scream loud with whistles and bells and loudspeakers. But
literally.
and to create a false mass consensus, but it's not the mass consensus.
No,
They're a minority. They
yeah,
are the one being
yeah,
fascist and hateful, clearly by the fact that they're
yeah.
obstructing the constitutional and statutory rights of others. Now, I interrupted you earlier when you were giving a list of stuff for parents to do, and you were about to say, talk to your child.
Oh, talk to your child. So, we are the safe space and we are being painted as, ooh, yeah, you can't, the kids, yeah, no, not good. A lot of it's insidious. It's really
Yeah,
reading
glitter
between the
family and all that
lines.
sort
But
of
as a
thing.
parent, you're like, am I dangerous? Is that what you're telling
Mm.
teachers? Is that what you're telling my child? Like they're putting this idea in their head. So, I talk to my kids and I just have a thing when we're driving down the road. I say to my kids, can a girl be a boy? And they say no. And I say, can a boy be a girl? And they say no. And I say, can a girl be a tomboy? And they say yes. And I say, can a boy be effeminate? And they say yes. I said, do we respect everyone? Yes. So I'm getting there first. Well, I hope I'm getting there first. Maybe I'm not. But really, this comes from the parents in a vacuum. The belong tos of this world win. So don't be shy. Talk to your kids about it.
And another thing to include, which I always champion, is tell your child if something doesn't sound right. I know that they're always taught sit and listen to your teacher, but if you're being taught something isn't right, or you've been graded and you've got a big fat X that's not right and this is the right answer, but it's okay to challenge that. And mommy and daddy or whomsoever is the guardian, we will support you.
Yeah.
If the teacher comes and say, if you're afraid that the teacher's going to come and say, oh, they've been problematic in school, they're saying that this is what the lesson is and they're saying that it's wrong and it's just destructive, we're not going to say to the teacher, oh gosh, let me have a word with little Jimmy. Are you being disruptive? We're going to back you up and say, well, yes, the child has a critical thinking. They have a mind of their own that they're developing. And you've said something that's factually incorrect. I don't care what workbook it's printed in. I don't care what organization has told you and given you, a deck of slides to present to the class as fact. It's not fact. A child, teaching a 5th and 6th class child that they can be a boy, a girl, neither or both is not a fact. So, you don't have to be aggressive if you're not agreeing with the teacher or whatsoever, but you also don't have to sit there and be told that you are wrong, because that is bullying. That is bullying.
It is bullying, and it's gaslighting. And just as if our child came home and said, you know what, Mom, today in math, the teacher said 2 + 2 = 5 and said, we all have to agree it. We have to get on board. It's progressive. They had it wrong. And it was old fashioned to say 2 + 2 = 4. And you're old fashioned and you're kind of not safe to talk to about that. Like, that's how insane these conversations are. It's not that we don't have love in our hearts for any children who are being intentionally confused. And if adults want to do what they want to do, fine. But we live in reality. We're grounded in reality. And our children need critical thinking, because they're getting a barrage of messages, and 2 + 2 = 4. And a boy is a boy and a girl is a girl. And then we work in a nurturing medical, system if a child is confused about that. We don't have NGOs and volunteers and teachers. And can I just say, and I know we're going way over, we're not anti-teacher. I have a sister who's a teacher in the States, and we were just talking this weekend about this. And she said, you know what, like, we're not equipped to handle these issues. She said, I'm not a social worker. I'm not a nurse. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a psychiatrist. And I said, I know. And she loves teaching, and she's an English teacher. And
if you look at the Irish
wants
education
to teach.
lines,
She just
a
said,
lot of great
we're
teachers.
not equipped.
Being bullied.
Yeah, and it's not fair. It's not fair on the teachers. I wouldn't want to be a teacher.
Feel like you have to teach this. And imagine if the principal brought in and it says, for all teachers, this training, the all together now, it says it's for all teachers, for all faculty. So that would mean that every teacher, even if they're only rolling it out, I don't know, it doesn't say, but even if they're only rolling it out to 4th, 5th and 6th class, then teachers right from junior infants are being taught this anti-bullying thing, that's under the guise of anti-bullying. And they're basically being taught this, and they might think, well, that goes against my conscience, that goes against my good instinct, that goes against my intellect. And they're being made to feel as if they can't speak up and voice it.
So we need to stand up, parents and teachers together, and say, enough's enough. School is for education, not indoctrination. Leave the kids alone. And if they have a psychological issue, it's not for schools to be forced to deal with it. It's not for schools to hide it. It's for parents to be involved, advised, and to deal with the appropriate licensed medical community to protect
should they choose to
whatever they choose to do.
It's whatever the resources they want to reach out to, that they believe is right for their family and their child. That is their right.
No, I think we've hit an hour. So
we have, and my apologies, it's been so long. Thanks for everybody who did listen to the end. As I said, if we've left out anything, or if there's any resources that you're not sure with, just get in touch with us, and we are happy to get in touch back and point you in the right direction, or indeed engage you ourselves and have a chat. It's all about empowering everybody. Nobody, as we say about all of the campaigns, about everything, nobody is the leader. Do it this way. We're all leaders here. Every one of our families, we are the parents, we are the mothers or the fathers or the guardians within our family structure. We are the pinnacle of society, because we are creating the adults of tomorrow in our own little homes. And it's the most important role you could ever have, no matter what role you could possibly do in life. So the power is with absolutely everybody, and there is no leader in these movements. We need everyone.
Agreed.
Okay, so you have got the record button your side, Lisa.
Oh yes, I'm here waiting for you to do something. That's on me. Yes, thank you to everyone who managed to stay to this point and keep the faith.